Hey, this is Reto Peter, and you are listening to the Nothing Shocking podcast.
Want to know what's going on in the world of music? Then tune in to the Nothing Shocking podcast, a non-genre based, all ages friendly rock and roll program. Join us weekly for interviews with all your favorite rock stars from the mainstream to the underground. You can find us at nothingshocking.libsyn.com or anywhere you download podcasts.
We're putting the band back together.
The numbers all go to 11.
I'm talking about bands that rock. Led Zeppelin. What about Sabbath? AC/DC. Motorhead.
Does that mean it's louder? Isn't it any louder?
Well, it's one louder, isn't it?
We're not worthy. We're not worthy.
Why don't you just make 10 louder and make 10 be the top number and make that a little louder?
These go to 11.
I get up off the ground and raise my head. Days like this, think I should be dead. One for Satan, two for me. Let's cheat the devil, it's fun, don't you agree?
Welcome to the Nothing Shocking podcast. I'm your co-host, Jeff Untied, and with me in Dog Bowl Studios is
Coach Nez.
You can find the Nothing Shocking podcast on Libsyn or any podcatchers. Like our Facebook page or follow us on Twitter at NoShockPod.
You can also find the Nothing Shocking podcast on Rock Rage Radio every Sunday morning at 7 a.m. Central Time. Our sponsor is Ragged Records, located in downtown Rock Island, Illinois, and downtown Davenport, Iowa. We'd like to thank the Hong Kong Sleepover for allowing us to use their music for our intro and bumper ending. Tonight's guest is
Reto Peter.
Yeah, producer, mixer, engineer. Yeah. Just won a Grammy.
I know. That was awesome.
Yeah.
I think like that weekend.
Yeah, exactly. Best Children's Music Album.
Alphabet Rockers, The Movement.
So he was the mixer for that album and a producer, engineer of many of rock and roll notoriety. So, hey, let's get to that interview.
All right. Good night.
Good night. Reto, welcome to the Nothing Shocking podcast. I'd like to introduce you, my co-host, Jeff Untied.
Hey, thanks for joining us tonight.
Thank you for having me. This is awesome.
Oh, this is so cool.
Right.
So, you became highly regarded from our buddy Orion Salazar to get you on the podcast. So
Love that guy.
He's the best. So, well, hey, let's get right into it. So exciting news.
Yeah.
You were part of a Grammy Award winning team for Alphabet Rockers this past Sunday.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit more about the whole experience of all this?
Absolutely. Thank you. It was a trip. So the Alphabet Rockers are a children's group out of Oakland. There's 2 adults and 3 teenagers that are part of the group, and they've been making this is their 4th record, I believe, and they've been nominated a bunch of times, and but I have some mutual connections, and I was able to mix most of their latest record, which just won a Grammy for Best Children's Album in LA this past weekend. So my wife and I went down. We went to the whole ceremony and the after party and everything, did the whole spiel, and it was quite something. It was a lot of fun, a lot of people, a lot of music, a lot of great dressed people walking around, and it was wonderful. It was something to see for sure. It was a great experience, and just be part of a project that is at that level is wonderful. And I've been lucky to have been part of some bigger projects in my career, and it is always great to work with people of that caliber too, because it's just you're so much more productive. You make great records, and so it was a pleasure. It was an honor to be part of this whole thing, and obviously, it's winning the Grammy. Kind of was a culmination for their career at this point, and so it was great to be part of it.
So exciting.
Yeah.
Well, my question is, when it comes to being nominated for a Grammy, just for an album to be nominated for whatever genre.
That's got to be a thrill.
That's got to be quite the honor. But how does the Grammy Awards, how do they narrow down? Do you have any idea what the scientific approach to narrowing down, hey, these 4 albums are going to be nominated for a Grammy? Any ideas?
Well, it's so you have to be a member of the Grammys to be able to vote. So there's two rounds of voting. So there's a submission process where basically anyone can submit their records, as long as like any member can submit a record they want for the first round voting, which happens in the fall before the Grammys. So you might have 500 or even more records for one category.
Oh, wow.
And then, so in first round voting, all the members can vote, and then the best 5 or 10, depending on the category, or 4 and 10, will end up on the second ballot, which is the final voting stage. And the ones that are on that final ballot, those are the nominees. So you have, it's 2 rounds of voting, basically. It's peer voting, and that's really how it goes. Yeah.
So the voters, do they have to do their homework on these 500 submissions?
They do.
Wow.
If you're taking it seriously, you should. And you don't vote. So as a member, you can, all members can vote on the main categories, like Album of the Year, Song of the Year, and so forth, like the stuff that we see on TVs. Those are kind of the main categories. Plus 3 genre categories that you have to be a professional to be a part of the Grammys. And so if you're a songwriter, you vote in more of the songwriting categories. For me, producer engineer, I vote in the production fields, basically. So I wouldn't really vote on best jazz album because that's not what I do.
Right.
That's not my background. So they want people to vote in their specific field of knowledge and expertise, and that's kind of how it works. So no, I choose my categories, and then I listen to those records as much as I can, which is a lot of work. And then I choose my answer and vote for the people I think deserve it.
Oh, very good.
Very nice. I read that you started playing drums at like the age of 7. What got you to the other side of the glass to be the producer engineer? Where'd you come from? Playing drums. I mean, I grew up in a musical family. My brother actually played drums before me, and then for a year, and then he stopped, and I was like, you know what, I'm going to start playing drums. Once he stopped, I started playing drums, much to the chagrin of my parents, but no, they were super supportive of us playing music. I guess it started I started playing in a band when I was 15 years old, and I was always the guy, setting up the mics, the PA, doing rehearsal recordings and stuff like that, and I just realized, I really like doing that. And so when I was about 18, I kind of knew what I wanted to do. I knew I didn't want to be a musician because I was too lazy to practice. I was like, I don't want to practice 4 or 5 hours a day. This is boring. But I could mess around with recordings all day long. So I knew exactly what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to do something with music, but also the technology, and obviously that's a perfect marriage of both. And through my, so I grew up in Switzerland, so that's my native country. And at my high school, the high school band teacher, he went to Berklee College of Music in Boston, and so I was in his orchestra, and he told me about it. He was like, hey, you should check out the school. And I looked at it and was like, that sounds like a perfect fit. So after graduating high school, and then actually in Switzerland, you have to do a military service too. So after my military service, I packed my bags and I moved to Boston to go to Berklee College of Music, getting a degree in music with majoring in music production and engineering. So I got both education there, engineering and the musical side. And that's how I ended up on the other side.
Oh, so cool. Bay Area, you're now considered like adopted son of the Bay Area. Kind of a hotbed for the music scene that is the Bay Area. Can you tell us about more to our listeners about what brought you to the Bay Area to work as a engineer / producer in the music industry?
Well, that didn't have anything to do with music. It had to do with my wife. So I met my wife. I met my wife on the East Coast in Boston, and we lived in New York for a while where I worked for a bit. And then her parents, she's an only child, and her parents were getting a little bit older, and she's like, I need to go home. I need to be close to my parents. And what can you do, right? I had a thing going in New York, but at the same time, I was an assistant and staff engineer at a studio, the Magic Shop in New York City. Mm-hmm. And I just didn't see a lot of movement as far as my career went over there. So I was like, okay, I can start again. I can start fresh. I only spent 3 years in New York, so I was still kind of in the beginnings of my career. So, and I knew I had to start from the bottom, moving somewhere else. And so, but I was okay with it. So we moved to Oakland and in 2000. So, 23 years ago. And I started working at, this place called Studio 880 in Oakland, which is a studio that's been around since the late 90s or mid 90s or something like that. And Chris Isaac would come through, Green Day would come through, and kind of some bigger Bay Area acts would come through, but also smaller acts. So that was kind of my initiation into the Bay Area scene. At that point, early 2000, the music scene wasn't that happening in the Bay because tech became really big and some musicians got driven out and everyone just kind of moved. It just wasn't much going on. Whereas in the mid 90s, late 90s, I heard that this, the Bay Area scene was hopping. Right. There was just so much good music, and I missed all that. I felt like when I got here, I wasn't quite the same, and so it took me a minute to kind of ease into the scene and get to know people and do some cool projects and stuff. But now I feel, obviously, over 20 years later, I feel pretty at home. I know I work with bands and artists of all genres. And I love the diversity of music here in the Bay. There's great rock, there's great metal, there's great hip hop, there's great indie stuff. It's kind of, you can find it all here, which, compared to LA, it's like, we're here kind of a small pond compared to LA, and which is hard as a professional for me to get enough work, but at the same time, it's a community. Everyone knows each other, or at least 1 or 2 degrees apart.
Oh, so cool.
So I love it. Yeah, I love it here.
Of all the musical genres that you've done, is there one particular genre you haven't really done yet that maybe you want to dabble in?
I would love to do more jazz, actually.
Nice.
I've recorded a bunch of jazz earlier in my career, and I kind of moved away from that and got into more indie rock, singer-songwriter, hip-hop stuff. And but I do like jazz, and there's something special about making a jazz record because it's all so in a moment. They're usually live recordings, maybe with very few overdubs, but it's usually a live recording. And it happens. The magic happens right then and there. And I like that. Having done records where it takes weeks and months to finish, sometimes it's nice to make a record that's done in less than 2 hours,
Very cool.
Well, let's change gears on you here. You and 2 other colleagues have formed Golden Gate Mixers. It's a mixing and mastering service located in the Bay Area. Can you give our listeners an insight on the, I guess maybe the ideology behind it for you and your partners? How did it all kind of come together?
So it's 2 buddies of mine, Matt Boudreau and McKay Garner, both excellent mixing engineers. We just kind of sat down together, and maybe I have to backtrack a little bit. So I started a very casual group called Bay Area Audio Nerds.
Mm-hmm.
And basically I have a mailing list of about 100 people or something like that, which they're all engineers or producers. They're all professional audio professionals. And I do monthly meetups. We either meet at a bar or we meet at studios, local studios, and we just hang out, we socialize, and, see what we're doing, what's going on in our lives. And I met Matt and McKay closer during those meetups. And actually Matt Boudreau approached me and McKay and said, "Hey, I know this place in England. It's a mastering collective where there's like 3 or 4 mastering engineers. They have one central hub for work. If you're looking for mastering, you go to this one website. You can choose your mastering engineer if you want to choose someone. And then it goes from there. Like the portal is the same, and it's just a little easier to find a mastering engineer, as opposed to scouring the internet and it's like, oh, how about this person or this person?"
Right.
And so Matt is like, why don't we do it for mixers? Because there's people out there that need to have their record mixed, but they don't know who to go with. And to have a place, have a portal that has, in our case, 3 people right there that you can check out. You can listen to their music. You can read about what they're doing and how they like to work, and even contact them and have a conversation with 3 different people right then and there. It seems kind of a cool thing for the client, because it also kind of shows that, we know what we're doing. We can vouch for each other. We're not just some random mixers that trying to make a buck and mix something on Fruity Loops or something like that. But then the other thing is also we hang out, the 3 of us. We socialize and exchange experiences and techniques and all that stuff. So it's kind of a collective in a sense of a social collective as a collective as well. Sure. And just making us better professionals, really. It's like, hey, what do you think about this mix? So we can, and kind of a feedback rounds that we can have and bounce work off each other and just kind of make us better mixers, basically. So Matt and McKay, they both do Atmos mixes as well. I only do stereo at this point.
Mm-hmm.
But they do stereo and Atmos. So we offer stereo mixing, Atmos mixing, and mastering. Just kind of those 3 things that we do. And we're about to launch the website. It's still super fresh.
Yeah, nice.
We
Such a cool idea.
We have a Instagram, Golden Gate Mixers is our handle.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, we're super excited. We're super excited to see if this thing works, right? Yeah. We have no idea if this is a great idea concept, and I guess we'll find out.
Well, with the creation of Golden Gate Mixers, do you feel like as though this will affect your relationships with studios and labels any differently than it already is right now? Is this maybe a step in a more positive direction for you guys, or do you think it's just going to be business as usual?
I mean, the most work that we get, as far as like the 3 of us at the level that we are, most of my work is independent artists that don't go through labels. Mm-hmm. And so I deal directly with artists 90% of the time. And that's just kind of how the landscape is these days. Most records are done independently. The artist is paying for it. They have control over their record. And so, I don't think it'll change. I really don't think it will change. It's in a way, it's just changing the visibility a little bit to having a collective, to being able to promote it as a collective, as opposed to me trying to promote myself as a mixer, mm-hmm. My name. So we feel like gang together and just have a hub and just like, okay, we can promote this, and it kind of goes for everyone. So that was kind of the idea behind it. As far as like who's gonna call us, I mean, it remains to be seen, but I assume it's going to be just kind of business as usual. Hopefully a little bit more, obviously, but yeah. As far as the client goes, it's across the board really for everyone, but mostly independent.
Oh, very good.
What kind of goes into the background for prepping for working with an artist for either producing or mixing? Do you get a chance to sit down with them, work with them, or do they just hand it over to you and say work your magic? How does it work for you?
When it comes to mixing, so when I get hired to do a mix, it's usually people just send me the files. I usually have either email or phone call where we talk about stylistic approach, or is there something specific they want me to do with it, or their expectations, reference tracks. Like, I want, if the artist says, I really like that reverb on this record here, can you do something like that? And that always helps, obviously, because it gives me kind of a guide to what the client wants. But especially with clients that I've worked before, they just send me the stuff and say, here's another record, can you mix it? And then I mix it, and then send it to them, and then we go back and forth with revisions until it's good. So that's in a way a lot more hands off. When I produce a record or an artist, it's a lot more involved. I'm usually part of the song, selection. I might ask the artist, hey, send me 20 songs so we can choose 10 that I feel like are good. I usually do a lot of pre-production with them too, meaning I might take the demos and put them in my Pro Tools and maybe edit them and say, hey, let's cut this first chorus in half, and we need, more at the end. We need another outro, or that bridge is too long, and things like that. So we work on the arrangement of the song structure in the demo process. So I might cut up a demo, send it back to them. They'll go back in the rehearsal space if we're not in the same city. They'll do another demo, they'll send it to me, and I'll look at it and get feedback and so forth. If the band's local, I usually go in the rehearsal room and we'll sit down and we just go through the songs, and I can give them feedback right then and there. And it's like, hey, how about you try it 5 BPMs faster? Or, you know what, that bridge needs to be double time as opposed to half time. Stuff like that.
Oh, so
and
cool.
So by the time the songs are done, we feel like, these are good demos. We, the structure of the songs, we go in the studio and track and overdub and do all the good stuff. So it really depends on what my job is on the project.
It wouldn't be Who of Us if we didn't talk about the elephant in the room, and that would be Green Day's American Idiot album. You were one of many engineers that contributed on that album. A lot of people consider it to be Green Day's Sgt. Pepper's of sorts.
Oh, it still holds up.
It still holds. Yeah, it still holds up time.
Absolutely.
Can you talk a little bit more about your contributions and responsibilities during the recording process of that album?
Sure. Yeah. So that happened at Studio 880, that studio that I was mentioning earlier that I was working at, and they came in. They did a previous record, I think it was Minority. They did at that studio as well, and so they came in to do this next record, and we basically spent almost a year, or they did, not we. They writing and recording that record. It went through multiple iterations and versions, but the main thing that we did in Oakland was kind of crafting, putting together the songs. There's the two kind of mini operas on the record, like the longer songs, and we literally edited those together in a way that they might have had the first part, and then Billy will come in the next day and say, I got a next part. And then we add to it. And so it was just an editing nightmare, those operas. And by the end that we were done, and because we were just literally taking from different songs, adding new songs, parts and things like that. It was not cohesive at all. It took a long time to build what now sounds like a very cohesive song, yes. 9-minute song, but it was not. It was really hard work to make it work, to have these tempo changes, to have, going from one part to the next to make it seamless and things like that. So that's kind of what we did in Oakland. We basically recorded all the songs, and there was communication between the band and the A&R in LA. He would come up, Rob Cavallo would come up every now and then, be with the band and kind of give them feedback on the songwriting. So they wrote a lot of songs during the time, and a lot of the songs were not used. So it was kind of the writing process that was happening in Oakland. And so my job was, I was a staff engineer at that point, and they brought in their own engineer, Chris Dugan, and he kind of started out the record, and I was assisting Chris, but then we got so busy to the point we would run two studios at the same time, A and B.
Oh, wow.
And so Chris would be in one studio, I would be in the second studio. And so, after a month or so, Chris and I just started sharing the engineering duties. Whoever kind of was there when they showed up, that, we just kind of, worked together, and which was great. I love Chris. Chris later then stayed on with Green Day and has been engineering pretty much all their follow-up records. But so when we were done, when they were done with the record, kind of writing and quote unquote demoing the record, they took it all down to LA and re-recorded most of it. Mm. And so I don't have an engineering credit on it. I have an additional engineering credit on the record. Yeah.
Oh, very good. Well, not only have you worked with Green Day, you've worked with Counting Crows, Modest Mouth, Flipside. I guess you've worked over over 100 different albums. What new young talent have you been working with lately?
I've been really enjoying working with singer-songwriters. I just produced this songwriter, Redemption Breaking, he calls himself, Nate Walker. He is a local songwriter, and I really like his songwriting, and it's a little bit going into the Americana style genre. So he would come in with a song and a guitar, and I would basically help him build the whole song around it, the whole arrangement. That could involve drums, piano, keyboards, more guitars, and all that stuff. And so it was a true collaboration, and I think his songwriting is really, really good. So making those records with him has been a lot of fun. I think here. That's kind of what's at the top of my head. I know there's other great stuff that's going on. I do a lot of mixing for people. I produced a punk band, a Swiss punk band, a while ago. They actually came out, they flew out to Oakland and stayed in Oakland for 10 days, and we tracked a record and did overdubs here in Oakland, and then they went home and I mixed a record, and they're called the High Times. It's kind of a pop punk quintet out of Zurich with a female singer. And that was super fun. It's going to be a great record. I think it's coming out this summer. They're waiting for their vinyls to arrive. Cool. But that was a lot of fun. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
You serve as the chair or a chair on the audio production department at California Jazz Conservatory at Berkeley. Is that correct?
That's right. It's its own school. It's not connected to UC Berkeley. So it's the California Jazz Conservatory in Berkeley is in the city of Berkeley. It's a small jazz conservatory. They have a degree program there, and for it's very, very small degree program, but it's great. It's a great school. The faculty is awesome. Some really high caliber musicians teach there. And I've been just teaching production classes there. We have a very, very small audio production department. And I teach Pro Tools and Logic and mixing and recording. We just finished building a little recording studio at their facilities, and so we're getting a little bit more into recording over there. And I've been doing it for, I don't know, 5, even 6 years. So that's been fun. That's been fun. It's just kind of what I realized when I started teaching, now over 10 years ago, is trying to explain to a young student or to a young adult how to do recording, or especially mixing. I realized most of the stuff I learned by watching other people or someone showing me, and also by just sitting in control rooms watching someone mix for hours and hours and hours and see how they approach a mix, and then doing it myself as well, creating ways to how I approach a mix and how I approach a recording. How do I select certain microphones for instruments and things like that, to the point where it's kind of natural to me. It's I don't have to think about it. But then getting into teaching and trying to figure out how to put my knowledge that I've acquired by experience, putting that into words, is a challenge.
Yeah.
To teach someone how to mix, I was like, well, you just do this, right? It makes sense, right? But they're like, why are you EQing the hi-hat? What are you EQing? You know, what frequency, and why that frequency? And so I had to start thinking about actually my actions, and that was a really good learning experience for me. And then in the end, it made me a better engineer, because I had to learn why I'm doing certain things that I just do by nature. So that was cool.
Oh, very good.
So I enjoyed that. I do like half a day a week. That's I teach. So it's a very small part of my everyday job.
Fantastic. All right, so I have one last question for you. I asked this question to all of our guests. Hopefully you can shed some light, because you're on the other side of the glass. But as a musician and a fan of music, the mystery of rock and roll has kind of been taken away from us through the internet and social media. There's no mystery to rock and roll anymore. If we didn't have the internet and social media, we wouldn't be doing this with you right now. But for you, the fan and the professional, what do you like more, the accessibility that the internet gives us and social media gives us, or do you miss the mystique and the mystery of rock and roll?
Ooh, that's a tough one. Well, it's no black and white, right? You know, the good thing about today is the democratization of music, where you can make a record. You can, at home, if you want, you can put it on Spotify. You can release your record, and you can show it to your friends. You can do that 20, 25 years ago, or even 15 years ago.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, that's one thing. Whereas an independent artist with no big label behind you, you can express yourself. You can make your art, and you can show it to people. The problem is everyone's doing it, right? So you have, I don't know how many thousands of songs that are being uploaded to Spotify every day. So I just kind of call that the noise. So how do you get above all the noise of all these releases?
Right.
And that's where the problem is. And that's where, you know, people get frustrated, because it's like, well, I put my record out. Why is nobody listening to it? It's like, well, because making a record is really a 50% or even less of your job these days. You have to, because you're an independent, you have to promote it. You don't have a label that's doing it for you.
Yeah.
You have to promote it. You have to push it. You have to put money in it and all that stuff. And that's a lot of work that most people don't want to do, because it's not fun. creating a record, creating music, making a record. That's the fun part. So it's definitely gotten harder because, yeah, you're independent. You can release stuff, but all the responsibilities fall on you. You are your own business. Whereas when we had labels, you made the record. Sometimes they even paid for it. And then you gave them the record and the label did their thing. They had their connections. They had their distribution. They had their marketing and all that stuff. They took care of all that stuff that you as an artist didn't want to deal with.
Right. Yeah.
And so that was great, but the labels also were the gatekeepers. So you could have a really cool band, and if they couldn't find a label that believed in the band, they had a really hard time releasing something. And so, it's a little bit of both. I do think there's too much noise out there these days. There's too many, bedroom or demos that are being released on Apple Music and Spotify these days, where it's like, well, you should have just hired some professionals to make that record. Don't just do it all yourself. So I do see that, and I wish people would take a step back and ask them to gain some perspective. It's like, is this record really worth releasing? Just because it's easy to release doesn't mean it has to be released. Whereas, during the, 20 years ago, before streaming, a label put a lot of money behind it, especially because they needed to print CDs. So there was a lot of cost involved. So they wanted to make sure that the product that's going out is at the best quality it can be or should be. And so there was a quality control happening, which with a lot of independent records these days is not happening. So I do miss that because, with technology being what it is, with everyone has a studio on their laptop, and YouTube as their teacher, or learning hub, everyone, a lot of people think, oh, I can mix a record. Oh, I can record my own record. It's right there. I can just go up YouTube and say how to record a drum set, and it'll tell me right there. But they don't have, they're not realizing that making a record is an incredibly hard and involved skill that takes years to acquire. I mean, the people that make records, that make good records, they've been doing it for a long time. And the reason why they're good records is because they studied the craft. They worked on that craft, and it took a long time. And so, I feel like that I do miss that a little bit. The craft of recording, the craft of producing, is getting lost a little bit because it's just not appreciated as much as it was back, before streaming. And, but now I'm saying but again, at the other end, you have some very cool experimental music that just comes out of someone's laptop because they have so much time. Because you can work on a song forever, basically, because it's just on your laptop. You're not paying for studio time. So, on the other hand, you see, recordings and albums that come out that are different, they're taking chances as far as sounds and songwriting, and that's really interesting too. So, no, I don't have a straight answer for you. There's good and bad. I just feel like if we could just kind of focus a little bit more on the craft of record making, I would love to see that.
Yeah.
Just, not just like, hey, that's a cool beat, let's put it out. I was like, no. Let's work on this a little bit. Is your vocal take really that good? I think you can do another take. Don't just sing it once and then be done with. But also a lot of, not knowing what can be done in a studio or what can be done for a production. It's the other thing. It's just because people don't know. People don't know, hey, you can, if it's better to sing it a few times and then make a vocal comp out of it, and things just even in mixing, stuff like that. So there's good and bad on both ends. But I think we can do a little bit better. We can be a little bit harder on ourselves as far as when it comes to quality control, and just kind of ask ourselves, is this worth putting in the world?
Yeah.
So I guess that's my answer.
Very good.
Very good, yeah.
We're out of our allotted time for the evening. Is there anything that we left off tonight that you would like to plug or promote?
No, come to Golden Gate Mixers. Check us out. We're on Instagram, Golden Gate Mixers, and goldengatemixers.com will be up shortly. And, yeah, I mean, if any of your listeners who have musical projects and need some mixing, I'd love to talk to them and just hit me up, shoot me a message, and go from there. You can also go to my website, smalltunemusic.com or smalltune.com, or you can just Google my name, Reto Peter, and you can find out more about the records I've done, stuff that I've been working on, and so forth.
Oh, very good.
Yeah, we want to thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me on. This is awesome.
Absolutely. So this is how it's going to work out. Jeff, the editing wizard over here, he'll get it all cleaned up for us, ready to go. Probably about 3 weeks.
Okay.
Does that sound good? All right. Well, thank you so much, man.
It's been a pleasure.
It's been a real pleasure.
It was nice to meet
I can't
you.
wait to hear it.
Yeah. Well, and like I said,
right.
as soon as it's ready, and then I'll send it to you immediately, and then please share it to all your socials.
Will do.
All right, man.
Will do.
Thanks
Sounds
a lot.
Thank you.
Take care. Have a good night.
one.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Everybody hides at home inside their nest of snakes. Everybody grinds the stone and makes their own mistakes. Hide in the headlights, fight the grip of fear. You can make your dreams come true, but you just can't do it here. Hey! Everybody eyes the gun and screams inside their head. Everybody bites their tongue and pays their bills instead. Hide in the spotlights, fight the grip of death. You can have the air you need, but you best not take one breath. Hey! Roll the dice. says their last goodbyes. Move to the sunshine, fight the grip of nights. If they ever take from you, then